Welcome to the deep dive, where we take stacks of sources, research, and analysis and distill them into the knowledge you really need to be well informed. Today, we're tackling a word you see everywhere in wellness: adaptogens. These natural substances that promise to boost your stamina, your focus, basically help your body, well, adapt to stress.
Boom.
And the king of them all, the one everyone thinks they know, is ginseng.
But the word ginseng itself is almost meaningless when you actually look at the science. It's become a catch-all term.
A marketing term, really.
Exactly. It's used for several different botanicals that,
Right.
well, some aren't even related. They have completely different active compounds, and they have totally distinct uses.
And that's exactly why we're here. Our mission today is to cut through all that complexity.
Oh.
We are deep diving into the three main players: Panax ginseng, which you might know as Asian or Korean ginseng.
Right.
Then there's American ginseng.
Panax quinquefolius.
And the one that's technically an imposter, Siberian ginseng. We're going to clarify the differences in their chemistry, what they actually work for, and maybe most importantly, the safety profiles you absolutely need to know about.
Let's start with the most fundamental distinction, because if you miss this point, you really miss the entire story. It all flows from the chemistry.
Okay, so unpack that for us. What's the core molecular difference between these three?
You've basically got two major chemical camps.
Hmm.
So Panax and American ginseng, they're true cousins. They're both in the Panax genus.
Okay.
Their effects are driven primarily by a family of molecules called ginsenosides.
Ginsenosides.
Yes, those are the heavy hitters. They're what interact with your body's metabolic and neuroendocrine systems.
Yeah.
But then you have Siberian ginseng.
The imposter.
Chemically speaking, it is. It's an entirely separate plant, Eleutherococcus syndicosus.
Wow.
It's only grouped with the others because it's also an adaptogen, but its active compounds are called eleutherosides, eleutherocytes,
Yeah.
A through M.
So simply put, if a product has ginsenosides, it's a true Panax ginseng.
Right.
And if it has eleuterosides, it's Siberian. And because the chemicals are different, the effects are fundamentally different.
Exactly. The chemical profile determines everything, which systems it targets, what it does. And, before we move on, we should probably add a general safety note that comes up in all the sources.
Good idea.
Because we're talking about roots, their activity can be really dependent on the source. The preparation is a dried root, an extract, a tincture, and unfortunately potential contaminants, pesticides, things like that.
So quality control really, really matters here.
Immensely, especially with something where the dosing is so specific.
Okay, that's a crucial point. Let's start with the classic then. Panax ginseng, the traditional Asian staple, the one you hear about for, stamina and managing the daily grind.
What's really fascinating about Panax is how broad its reach is, particularly for things that impact cognitive performance and circulation. The sources point to it as a traditional immunostimulant, for sure. But where the clinical data gets really strong is in two very specific areas.
And those are
Cognitive enhancement, helping with mental clarity, focus, and maybe, surprisingly for some, it's used in supporting male fertility and addressing erectile dysfunction.
Oh, that's interesting. So it really sounds like a neurocognitive and circulatory powerhouse. Let's do an evidence check. Where is the data strongest for it being effective?
The evidence points toward it being possibly effective for cognitive function, for helping manage type 2 diabetes, and for erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. So a pretty strong profile for conditions linked to vitality and blood flow.
And on the flip side, we need that balance. Where does the science say it's maybe not the miracle cure people hope for?
Well, studies suggest it's possibly ineffective for boosting general athletic performance.
Okay, so don't expect it to shave time off your marathon.
No. And also for managing traditional menopausal symptoms. The data just isn't there.
Let's talk dosage. For someone looking into it for, say, cognitive function, what do the studies typically use?
There isn't one single standardized regimen. But the sweet spot in a lot of the clinical trials seems to be between 200 and 400 milligrams of a standardized extract.
Okay.
And that's taken orally, once or twice a day.
Now, for the critical safety flag, it's generally well tolerated, right? Maybe some headaches, mild stomach upset. But the big contraindication here is significant.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Panax must be avoided if you have uncontrolled hypertension.
High blood pressure.
Yes. And, of course, during pregnancy. And this connection really makes sense if you think about it. If it's effective for ED, which is often a vascular issue.
Right, it's about blood flow.
Exactly. It's promoting vasodilation, increasing circulation. But that means it's also putting upward pressure on your cardiovascular system. For someone whose blood pressure is already too high, That's a serious risk.
That makes so much sense. Connecting the mechanism to the warning makes it so much easier to remember. Okay, let's pivot to the other true ginseng, American ginseng. Same genus, Panax, but surprisingly different applications.
Right. And this is where the world of ginsenosides gets really nuanced and interesting. While they both have ginsenosides, the ratios and the specific types in American ginseng seem to drive different effects.
How so?
The pharmacology here focuses really heavily on modulating glucose metabolism and fine-tuning immune responses.
So instead of being the cognitive booster, American ginseng is more of a metabolic regulator.
Precisely. Its primary validated uses are centered around type 2 diabetes management and helping the body fight off upper respiratory infections. It's a much more targeted profile.
Okay, so with that focus on diabetes, I imagine the dosing is incredibly important, especially around meals.
This is a critical detail for anyone managing blood sugar. For diabetes, the research suggests a pretty large dose of the root. We're talking 3 to 9 grams taken 2 hours before a meal.
2 hours before?
Yes, but here's the key part. The studies also show there is no added benefit once that dose goes over 3 grams.
Wait, really? So taking 9 grams isn't 3 times better than 3 grams?
Not according to the data. It seems 3 grams is the threshold you need to hit for that metabolic effect, and anything more is. Well, you're just wasting it.
That's fascinating. Okay, what about its use for respiratory health? We hear about that a lot.
For preventing respiratory infections, yes. The research, often connected to products like ColdFX, typically recommends a standardized extract, about 200 milligrams taken twice daily.
And for how long?
It's a long-term commitment, usually for about 3 to 4 months to really build up that immune support.
Let's talk safety profile. We flagged Panax for hypertension. What are the big red flags for its American cousin?
Oh, this list is significantly longer. And it's more complex. It really hinges on its potential hormone-like activity.
You mean phytoestrogenic effects?
Exactly. So American ginseng must be strictly avoided in pregnancy, in hypertension, and critically, in any hormone-sensitive cancer. That includes breast, endometrial, and ovarian cancers.
Wow. Why that specific link to hormone-sensitive cancers?
The concern is that those phytoestrogen-like compounds could, in certain contexts, stimulate the growth of tumors that depend on hormones. And that same caution extends to other hormone-sensitive conditions, like endometriosis or uterine fibroids.
That is a massive caveat. It just underscores that the two Panax species, even with the same name, cannot be used interchangeably.
Absolutely not. And there's more. Caution is also needed if you have bleeding disorders, cardiac disease, diabetes, hypotension, insomnia, or even schizophrenia. The potential for interaction is broad. You really need to consult a professional.
Okay, so we've covered the two true ginsenoside groups. Now for our third player, Siberian ginseng. This is where the chemistry shifts entirely to eleutherocydes, and the focus swings back to generalized stress management.
This one is the textbook adaptogen for mitigating chronic stress, fatigue, and building stamina. And its mechanism is tied directly to those unique eleutherocydes, A through M.
And how do those eleutherocydes work? We hear a lot about the HPA axis.
Yes, that's the key. They primarily modulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis.
Which is kind of like the body's central stress thermostat.
That's a perfect way to put it. When you're under chronic pressure, that thermostat is just running hot all the time, signaling for more cortisol, more adrenaline. Siberian ginseng seems to help, well, recalibrate that signaling loop. It helps the body return to baseline faster.
So it's helping balance out that chronic fight-or-flight response.
That's the idea. That's the scientific link to why it can help you feel less stressed and fatigued.
Are there any clear clinical efficacies, or is it mostly traditional use at this point?
It's still largely investigational. It's been looked at for a whole host of conditions, chronic fatigue syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, but the data is currently insufficient to say it's effective. There is some suggestion it might help with the common cold or herpes simplex outbreaks, but it's not strong data yet.
Let's talk dosing for Siberian ginseng, especially since it's often used in cycles.
Right. For the dried root, the standard dose is somewhere between 0.6 and 3 grams daily. If you go for a standardized extract, and you want one standardized to 0.3% eleutherocyte E, the regimen is usually 400 milligrams, taken 1 to 3 times a day. And critically, like you said, it's usually taken for a defined period, say 30 to 60 days, and then you take a mandatory break of 2 to 3 weeks before you'd start again.
That cycling is such a hallmark of adaptogen use. Okay, now that we've detailed these 3 distinct profiles, let's connect it all to the absolute latest science. What do the newest studies say about ginseng as a category?
The latest findings really validate a lot of the traditional use, but they also introduce some fascinating new nuances about how we should use it. First, let's go back to fatigue,
Okay.
specifically disease-related fatigue. Robust 2022 meta-analysis found clear evidence that ginseng supplementation modestly reduced this type of fatigue compared to a placebo.
So this isn't just I need more coffee fatigue. This is the deep fatigue that comes with a serious health condition.
Precisely. They saw this reduction in general, but the findings were particularly strong for cancer-related fatigue.
Oh.
But here's the real deep dive moment. When they compared the delivery methods, the researchers found that injectable forms of ginseng had a significantly larger effect than oral forms.
How much larger?
The standardized mean difference for injections was 0.74 versus just 0.29 for oral delivery.
That is a dramatic difference. It makes you wonder, if the same substance is going into the body, why does the delivery method change the clinical effects so profoundly?
It's all about bioavailability and something called first-pass metabolism. When you swallow an oral supplement, your liver and your digestive system immediately start breaking down those ginsenosides.
So a lot of it never even makes it to your bloodstream.
A large portion of it, yes. It never reaches the bloodstream in its most therapeutic form. An injection, on the other hand, bypasses that entire system. It delivers a much higher, purer concentration directly into circulation.
Which means for anyone listening who's buying oral supplements, you have to be conscious that your effective dose is probably a fraction of what's on the label. That's a huge reality check for the supplement aisle.
Absolutely. And moving from fatigue to metabolism, the second recent finding really reinforces the metabolic power of the Panax species. A very recent 2024 double-blind study on pre-diabetic Koreans.
Yeah.
It saw some impressive results.
What were they taken and what improved?
They took just 1 gram of red ginseng extract daily for 12 weeks, and the results showed significant improvement in multiple metabolic markers. Fasting glucose, HbA1c, insulin resistance, all of it improved compared to the placebo group.
So that really shores up the evidence for American and Panax ginseng in glucose management.
It does. It adds a strong, modern piece of evidence to the pile.
Okay, so let's summarize for everyone listening. The core takeaway here is that while all three are sold under this big ginseng umbrella, they are unique pharmacological tools.
We've established that Panax leans toward cognitive function and circulatory issues like ED. American ginseng is your targeted tool for metabolic issues, like type 2 diabetes, and specific upper respiratory support.
And Siberian ginseng is your HPA axis modulator for managing that generalized chronic stress.
Right.
But the single most actionable piece of information is the safety profile. Before you even consider any of these, you have to check for those big red flags. Panax should be avoided with uncontrolled hypertension.
A must.
And American ginseng requires strict caution with any hormone-sensitive condition because of that phytoestrogenic potential.
And that's really the bottom line. The sources consistently show that efficacy isn't just about the plant. It's about the species, the preparation, the dose, and importantly, the patient context.
Right.
So the final provocative thought we want to leave you with builds on that recent meta-analysis. If an injection can deliver 2 to 3 times the measurable effect of an oral supplement for something like cancer fatigue, what does that imply about the future of effective botanical medicine?
And as a consumer today, how much research do you need to do on the extraction process and the bioavailability of your oral supplements to make sure you're actually getting a dose that can have a real measurable effect?
Be well